Do you guys even realize you really pulled it off?
You could see the entire sea of red of all the Staunton fans that were there. And I get chills just thinking about that because it's a memory in my mind now. But the raw emotion of seeing that, but then also there was the 17-year-old mindset because Lucas Calcari said he'd shave his head if we won state. So there's a lot of video of us ruffling his hair because he said he'd shave his head. Seeing the raw emotion on our parents' faces and my mom and dad, just as an example, and what that meant to them. And then now when you have your own kids and you're chasing games or activities, to see that have that opportunity to finish number one and not lose, it's so hard to do. So I think it meant so much at 17, but now pushing 31 years, it's like, wow, it is something you never will take for granted.
What's that like? What's going on, people? Hey, it's your old pal Johnny here from the What's That Like podcast, and we are back for episode 3 of our new season, and I've got a great guest for you today. It's someone I've wanted to have on the show for probably 6 or 7 years, going back to my first run of episodes, but I never made it happen. It's all on me. But I want to bring to you today one of my favorite heroes in this whole world that we live in today. Let's give it up for Brad Skertich. Brad, you're here. How you doing? Welcome to the What's That Like podcast, buddy.
Wow, I'm excited to be here. I'm good. I've enjoyed listening to you for many years, and then now that you're back at it, I'm thrilled to be here. And I guess I'm one step closer to the legend Zach Weigel now. So we'll just leave it at that.
We'll bring Zach Weigel up, I'm sure, at some point during our little discussion here today. But Brad, a couple of reasons I brought you on. It's really two. First, it's been 31 years since you and your brothers won the Illinois State basketball title, right? 31? Do I have the number right? And
1993, so we're at 31. Yeah. Yes, sir.
And then also, you're somebody that's really had a lot of success kind of moving up through the ranks of education here in mid-Illinois, and really want to talk to you about what's that like, really, as times go. What does the superintendent do, what it means to everyone, and the responsibilities you carry with that. But let's start with what everybody thinks we're going to talk about, right? So those 31 years, it's 31 years ago you won, but this story probably starts, a lot. What were you like as a kid? Were sports a big thing for you? You grew up in Staunton, I knew you when you were a little guy, right? But
we were, it's different. I mean, you look at today, I can remember getting on our bikes at around 9-10 in the morning with our neighbors, the Painters or Popovich and Best, and we would just ride bikes all day, play basketball, play football. There were so many different opportunities, but we were rarely ever home. And you played baseball in the front yard. You'd ice skate at the L Pond. There was always something going on, but rarely ever were we inside. And I think if I go back to looking at it as a kid, we were always on the go and everything was ultra competitive. Never a chance when you just give somebody a victory for the heck of it. But we were out and about, and mom and dad always say you have to be home around 5 for dinner, and usually make good choices was the frequent term that was said.
Tell me about your mom and dad.
Oh, they're good. They're both retired educators. My dad forever. He didn't know how to leave, they tell him. And then my mom, retired. My dad was retired principal. My mom a retired special ed teacher. They're doing well. I mean, they are 75 and 74 respectively, and they are on the go traveling all the time. And we jokingly say when we're that age, we want to be just like them because they're always having fun, doing things, and then just enjoying each other's company. So I think that's something we look forward to someday.
Your experience as a kid isn't very much different than anyone I talked to of that age, right? Of our age, right? Where you just got up, you left, you went and did things. You had the adventure. We didn't have cell phones. You came home when the fire whistle blew, right? That meant it was dinner time, those types of things. But did they really was your dad get into sports, Brad, go do sports? Or was that something that came from here?
I mean, he put the basketball hoop up. We played catch all the time as kids, but he didn't drive it down our throats. It was something that we just kind of fell in love with as a group where we were always, shooting, playing around the world, one-on-one, playing, faking that we're Ozzie Smith and, Tommy Herr back in the day with the Cardinals out in the front yard. So I think we just fell in love with it. But my dad had a fond love of athletics too. And so we were always watching football, baseball. There was always conversations about sports. And then we went to a lot of games too, with him being a principal. So it was naturally ingrained to be not only into sports, but following them pretty closely.
So as you said, you were out doing things. So here's what I'm envisioning. We'll cut to the end and come back. Right at some point, you guys win this championship in 1993, right, and you're winning it by putting 3 free throws away. Ron, or was it Ron? Ron hits the free throws at the end. But you guys, in your mind, probably took those shots a gazillion times as kids. Right. Everything was the end of the game. It was the championship. It was the NBA finals, or right. It was the World Series. I mean, that's the way it was for us. Right.
Yeah. There was always a countdown, like 5, 4, 3, 2, even have been the Nerf basketball hoop in the bedroom hanging from the closet door back in the day. Those were always something you did. And you always tried to envision being that walk-off home run or that last second shot. And, obviously Ronnie got to live sinking those free throws to clinch the title, and couldn't happen to a better person and a heart of gold and just a tough, confident kid. But that's something we all hoped for. And he was the right person at the right time at the line that day.
So tell me about how you guys all came together. 3 of you were seniors. So everything you did together growing up, you and Kevin and Andy, and then Brad was there, Brad Best, right? And yep. So I'm naming first names, but I should say it's Kevin Meyer, it's Andy Kuba, Brad Best. Who am I missing out of your class?
Matt Popovich was in there as well.
I know Matt.
That was the seniors on our team. And then Jeremy and Ronnie were the juniors that year. And obviously you had Kevin and Andy in there. So it was collectively as we went through school. Andy and I were together from kindergarten on. So I grew up with Andy, spent a lot of time in and out of school with him. Then knew Brad and Matt from St. Michael's Catholic Church, and my mom worked there. She had them in school. We did CYO together, the Catholic Youth Organization. So I was really close friends with Brad and Matt. And then Jeremy, there wasn't everywhere, was never too far away from, houses 6-7 blocks away. Was close. Jeremy moved in sometime around right before junior high, and knew him, but did not know him that well. But then as you get older and you spend more time together, you obviously get to know people's good, bad, and difference, just like we all do. And Jeremy and I grew closer. But I would say that our senior year, which would have been 92-93 basketball season, was when we got to know Jeremy really well. And then you cement that championship, and that cements a friendship for life regardless. And Jeremy's just a wonderful person, highly competitive individual. And then Ronnie came over his junior year, our senior year, from Livingston, and his parents bought a house in town, came to play basketball with the Bulldogs, and have really just, as a person, he's calm, he's level, doesn't say a whole lot, but when he talks, he knows it's meaningful. He's just a genuinely good person.
Did you guys treat him like the new guy? Like, did you haze the new guy? How did that work?
Well, anytime you have a room with Brad Best in it, it's all chill and laid back. And Brad is probably one of the best people you ever meet in your life, and he doesn't know a stranger. So whenever, Ronnie walks in, Best is the first one to break the ice and to just make everything go smooth. That's just Brad's personality, and he still does that today, and it's one of his best qualities.
It's funny. I can see that. He's a cut up.
He is. He's a genuinely good person.
Again, I'm cutting to the end, but this is a memory. Tell me if I remember it right. You guys came back to town at a big rally, and he gets on the microphone and gives out his phone number to all the girls.
Oh, yeah.
Is that right?
Oh, yeah. He gave out his phone number over the microphone in front of, a couple thousand people. To this day, it still holds weight, because only Best would do that.
That's funny. So really, this is where I'm going with it. This title run was not necessarily an accident. I don't think most things are. But when that season starts in the fall of 92, you guys are coming off football season, I'm sure. You're moving into basketball. You had won a couple of South Central Conference titles in a row, right?
Sure.
What was, I know Coach Legendre very, very well, right? So as you're starting this season, I know he's about putting expectations on you to set it. What was realistic expectations as you started that season off?
I think that was the beauty of our classes. We didn't have a lot of pressure. We were a football athletes, I think, in terms of that capacity. And we went 5-4 in football that year and didn't make the playoffs. So starting basketball season was devastating because we were expected to be a playoff postseason team for the first time in many years. And so we get to the first practice, and I don't know if there are expectations, but he said, guys, we have a good team. We could put this together and we could make a run at state. And we're all sitting at the end of the bench going, oh my God, I can't believe he's saying this. But he actually said it the first practice. And then about 2 weeks later, we go and get beat by 20 at Breeze, which was always the start of the year when they don't play football and they shoot lights out. I don't think we ever had any vision of what we were capable of. But at that point in time, we were all pretty grounded. Our parents expected high expectations of us, made us work hard. And there wasn't a lot of talk of what ifs. So I think preseason going into basketball, we were picked behind Litchfield, who had the Ellis twins had moved in, and they were picked to win the conference. And so there wasn't a lot of major expectations for us other than just to go out and play and work hard. And coach was he had a vision, but I'm not so sure we bought into it right out of the gate.
Yeah. So it was only Randy's second season as head coach. And so you had him as a junior and senior as a head coach, but not that anybody remembers me, right? I played basketball from 84 to 88, right? I was not even like the sixth or seventh man. It's probably like ninth, right? But my point is Randy was my coach, JV, right? So I'm assuming he was your coach, JV, freshman, sophomore year. So, because Mike Stivers was the coach before. I know those two guys and how their differences were. I want you to tell me what the difference was like between those two fellows as head coach.
Absolutely. I sat with Stivers about a year ago and talked with him for an hour and a half. He stopped in my office. He was in town with some friends playing golf, and he came by. He stopped in at 4 o'clock. I think it was 6 o'clock when he left. And we just reminisced, which was fun. Coach Legendre was our freshman coach. So we had him freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior year all the way through. Our freshman year, I think we lost a couple games. That would have been Kevin and I and Brad and Matt. Our sophomore year, most of us played JV, and we lost one game our sophomore year in JV. So we had Nathan Calcari was on that team, and then it was Kevin and Andy and myself and Brad, and we had a pretty solid run that year. And then our junior year, Stivers stepped away and coach took over. But how were they different? Randy had that personal connection with you. I mean, I spent most of my high school career at lunch going down to see him after we'd eat and hang out and talk in his class. He just had that bond to talk about how's your school, how's your family, how's your life. He'd want to know about all those little things. So when he asked you to run through a brick wall, you would do that because you knew he cared about you. That was never the case. Otherwise, you just you knew you meant something in his life, and that's how he treated you. Coach Stivers was very strict protocols on your line: 1 pass, 2 pass, 3 passes away, rebound. Do not make mistakes, make your free throws, and you will run until you're probably going to die. But I think the combination of those two, Stivers laid that groundwork in all of us, even probably Coach Legendre too, in those first 2 years. And then when Randy took over, he kept a lot of those principles, but then Coach also had all that bonding and connection and love that he had for us. So we always like to talk about good cop, bad cop. That's not a bad thing. I think they are both vital in any sports or even any business, successful business. You got to have both. And Stivers was the strict, structured, and you must do this. And Legendre was the I love you and I'll do anything for you and you mean a lot to me. And that combination got us to where we were as, freshmen, sophomores. Then Randy took over junior year. We fell short in that regional championship, I think, to Bunker Hill. And then our senior year, it was just the right combination. You can put the pieces together, and he just knew how to keep us motivated.
You talked about Randy wanting to know how you were. And this is why I have a connection to him. And, I'm in the mid 80s, and I'll tell a personal story here. And this is probably the first time anybody publicly knows this, but people knew, right? I wasn't a kid of great means. And when I was growing up, I remember shooting free throws as like a freshman in the summer or something. And he walks up to me and he says, "Getting your class ring next week? You going to get sized?" And I'm like, "No, I don't think I have the money for that." Right. And he took me aside and he basically, I couldn't tell you all the words that were spoken, but I'll tell you the outcome is he essentially said, "Well, I'll pay for it." And it wasn't like today, it's maybe $100 or something like that. And so he goes, "I'll pay for it. And then you come work for me this summer and you'll work it off." And so, if people back in the day, they knew Randy was a painter, right? Randy painted houses. He painted insides. He did, like drywall finishing, things like that. And
he refinished a few drywall holes in my dad and mom's house.
Yeah. So that was him, right? So I went out, we painted on a house for a week or two. I made some money. He paid me back. But the story really doesn't end there, right? That whole year, I will tell you, I was actually in between parents and houses. Both of my parents at that time lived out of state. I had moved in with the Atwood family in Staunton, and I'm living there for a summer and a half or something like that. But Randy was like my dad at the time, right? I was at their house a lot. I ate meals with him and Kathy and the kids. I coached baseball. I think it was maybe his Brad's team. Maybe you guys were probably a few years older than that. So I like coached first base. And I thought it was the greatest thing in the world. When I was coaching my own kids, they'd say, "How long have you been coaching?" I'm like, "Since I was 16 years old," right? Because I did that with Randy, And so and then I would tell you, years would go by into my 20s. I was still, if he needed a hand and he called and said, "Hey, we got a house to do this weekend. You free?" I would go and I would work with him. So there's nobody. You're like tearing up on me, right? I'm tearing up a little bit as I talk about it. But there's nobody in my life at that point in time that was more important to helping me become a better person and responsibility. So everything that you talk about that he was to you, he was that way for so many people, but he made you feel like you were the only one.
Well, he had that special way that if you did something wrong, he wasn't shy on chewing on my butt. I got my butt chewed quite a bit, but he could also pull you aside and put his hand around your neck and just say, "Hey," the big deep voice, and you knew you mattered. And that was probably the most special thing of Randy. And my dad will tell you, working with him for all those years, he retired, but then stayed working part-time for damn near another 15 years. He was good. He was good around kids, and he was good for young men at the time, and he's good for young ladies. But I will tell you, from our standpoint, he could chew your ass, but then he also knew you mattered too. And I think that's a good balance of tough love, but also kindness as well.
Yeah, I had to go off camera because I was wiping my eyes clear there, Brad.
I think that watching, there's certain things that trigger emotions when we watch about history and stuff. And we were jokingly talking before this started. I was watching Harrison Ford's latest Indiana Jones movie last night. And I said to Stacy, we were done, I go, "Damn, we're getting old." I go, Harrison Ford's, they showed this. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. But I think we have to be mindful of the things we've experienced in our life and never take them for granted. So watching you get emotional with that, or just reliving the story, all those pieces kind of formed who we are today. And we just can't ever take that for granted.
Yeah. As kind as he was, you said he would chew your ass. Again, I'm a sophomore maybe or something. We're in a JV game. I couldn't even remember who we were. It's the first quarter, maybe 5 minutes into this thing. And I got 4 fouls, and the buzzer hits on the clock, and I start walking toward the bench. And he goes, "Where the hell do you think you're going? You stay out there. I don't care if you foul out." I made it the rest of the game. I don't know how. But we won. But then afterwards, he's like, "What'd you learn?" It was more about the lesson about anything else than anything else. So great guy there to really be the leader. And so this whole run couldn't have had a better better leader at the helm. I was watching the game back last night on YouTube, so you can out there search for it, 1993 Staunton Championship, and it's out there to see. So as the season is going on, we got sidetracked here, but as the season's going on, the expectations weren't there. Tell me about the season as it builds up. I mean, you're just knocking off wins, but things like the Macoupin County tournament come around. What happens there?
Well, we get through the season. We started off in that Thanksgiving tournament that we were in. We lost the Breeze and went to the Thanksgiving tournament. I think we started off the year 2-2 or something of that nature. Then we jumped into conference play, and Coach did a good job of making sure we were highly motivated for Gillespie, Litchfield. There's just those games are just ones you earmark. They're coming. So we were able to knock some of those games off and win at a pretty consistent pace. So we walk into the Macoupin County tournament, and it's Verdon. And Verdon was our biggest rival that year in terms of the county tournament. At that point in time was the gold standard because Staunton had won so many under Stivers, and that was the one that you wanted to get as a starter in your senior year. You did not want to miss that. So we go into the county tournament. And two things had happened, and we were very superstitious, like to the point of weird, but very superstitious. Earlier in the year, we had started playing music before the games, and that was a tradition. Had to do it every game. So we didn't do it that game. The batteries went dead in the Macoupin County right before the game started. So that was one. Two, people were sick, but we got into that environment in the Macoupin County tournament, and Verdon knocked us off. They played well. We did not. And they won, they obviously beat us. And that was like the devastating part of the season because it felt like everything was ending that we should have. That was the culmination of the year, and we didn't make it. And I think we were pretty frustrated, upset. But then, the good thing is we had them at home about 5 days later, and we beat them by 10 at home. So I guess that was to live and learn where we were. So, they punched us in the mouth in the county tournament. We came back and got them at home by 10. So I guess, everything happens for a reason. You never say that I wouldn't say that there's good losses, but there are sometimes when you get a loss, it kind of wakes you up and brings you back to earth. And we had rattled off quite a few wins in a row at that point in time. So losing in the county tournament, while we didn't like it, was probably a good thing at that point in time.
It turned out to be a good thing. Had it not ended the way it did, you probably wouldn't have the same feeling about it. But it is actually on my list. What was it like during that run? Music was on my list to ask you, right? So it's like the thing that you brought up. I want to know what you did to prepare yourselves mentally for some of this stuff. And music is a big thing. What were you guys listening to? So if you were superstitious, there was one song or two.
So we played Billy Squier's album. Red Light, Green Light, The Stroke, everything played beginning to end. Then as we took the floor, we would always play We Will Rock You by Queen. That was what we wore. That's what we ran onto the floor. And that was probably 75% of the season. And the only time we didn't do it was the county tournament when the batteries were dead. Then we did it the one time when we lost at Southwestern, but there was no stopping them that night. They couldn't miss. But it was Billy Squier. And at some point in time, someone tried to change the music, and it was everybody went nuts and got mad because we always had to have the same routine, same rituals. And so there you go. And ironically, We Will Rock You with Queen was our go out song. Everybody was hyped up, which to think about that today, probably wouldn't hit those standards, but to where the season culminated to, it makes sense now. It's kind of you said everything happens for a reason. Well, maybe we had a vision that it was coming.
Yeah. Tell me what the movie Hoosiers meant to you all. I mean, I know when I played, that's when that movie came out. And I know Coach Legendre loved that movie.
I think the battle of the underdog is number one, that you always go into the match or the game or any contest thinking you can win. You never go in thinking it's going to be just to show up. And yeah, I'm glad to be here, but we're going to lose. So, David and Goliath always rings a bell. But when we look at this, Hoosiers, man, just watching that whole show, the movie from beginning to end, from Jimmy coming back to play to Normandale, winning the community over, to the last second victories that they shouldn't have gotten. So when we go through that, we were compared to the real life Hoosiers because of how our season transformed. how we weren't supposed to be in that realm, and we were, and then taking on Chicago Hills Franciscan in Staunton, Illinois. It was considered the biggest pregame underdog in the history of IHSA basketball at the time. I don't know if that's in fact true or not, but it was considered that we were picked to lose by 30. So to kind of have all that parallel is pretty special. And I can hear that theme song any place and still just get
Have you ever been to the real gym there over in Indiana, Brad?
I have not, but I do get to watch games in Fletcher Gymnasium, which is a pretty big deal in Collinsville.
Yeah.
So, but no, I have not, but we need to go.
Yeah, that's I was about 20 minutes from it once and we were driving back actually last summer from a trip out east, and I saw the billboard. I'm like, holy shit, it's like 10 minutes off the highway. We got to go. And I looked it up, didn't open till noon, and it was probably like 8:30 in the morning. I'm like, I'm not waiting 3 hours. We'll be back. But no, it's a shrine over there, and it's a monument to things like what you guys did. So tell me, did it feel like it was meant to be while you were living it? It turns out it was a Cinderella story, but did you feel like it at the time as you were going through it? You're ending the season, you're getting into regionals. Your biggest goal is probably, let's just at least win regional, right?
There was no social media. There was newspapers, and the media print that we picked up in Staunton was typically the Telegraph, and the Staunton Star-Times and the Post-Dispatch. Post-Dispatch did not cover our basketball team very little. So to that point, we had no idea. We were taking it. We knew game by game, and Legendre kept it, and Lamore were really good about making sure that we just focused on who our opponent was, and we didn't think too much other than that. And so practices were light. I mean, they made us work hard. We had some of probably the toughest practices of any team in the state because the JV team was that good. But as we went through, we had no idea. We went into that regional. We played Bunker Hill. I think we won 90-something to whatever. And then we went on to sectionals. And the only time we knew that it may be somewhat special was when Mr. Milam pulled us in and goes, you realize like 85% of the last how many state champions have come out of our sectional, super sectional bid. So if you guys can get through this, you have a chance. But really, we had no idea. I would say we were clueless to know that we didn't even know we were picked to lose by 30. All this resonates in my mind now, but I didn't know it then. After the games, we went and slept and relaxed. We had no idea what was coming next. It was just a very chill and low-key vibe, but I think that's also the culture that Legendre created too.
You were in the super sectional. You play Red Hill, right?
Yeah. And
do I have this right? You're down 6 with 17 to go.
It's right. 30 some seconds ish. Yeah. It was somewhere in that range. Yeah.
Yeah. So, when my son's growing up, he loves these 30 for 30 documentaries. And the one he quotes all the time is the one with Reggie Miller, where he hits 2 threes at the end of the game and he ties it and they go to overtime and they beat the Knicks or whatever it was. Right. And, he always talks about in that documentary, he had the presence of mind to step back and get the threes. That's a big quote between my son and I. He had the presence of mind because I quote it like 30 times, but I'd seen it before. Right. Tell me what happened.
Yep. We're down. We went into, obviously Kevin had gotten into foul trouble and fouled out. So they've got free throws to ice the game. And I think they had the front end of a 1-and-1. Well, we were down by 6. Jeremy hit a 3 and Andy hit a 3 to send it into overtime. So in the second overtime, Kuba I think he did a step back 3 and sent it into a second overtime. And the moral of the story is they missed 2 front ends on multiple front ends on a 1-and-1. I mean, and then if they make those, they win the game. And so that's why, we go back and look at that, those free throws that we practice with Stivers that Ronnie makes to seal it, or the free throws that you sat and shot in the gym for hours, as you were talking about when Legendre walked in. There's a reason we do that. And if they finish, we don't. But that being said, I think there was 6 seconds to go, or they were down by 6 with about 30 seconds to go. People were leaving and going home from Staunton. And I think then, there was people that got home, were mad and upset, and found out when they arrived home that we actually came back and won in double overtime. But to force 1 overtime was impossible. To force a second should have never happened. And then Andy tips it in at the buzzer. With Andy's tip in, Jeremy's three, Andy's multiple threes. I mean, it was just Cinderella. It's like a storybook that was written that played out in real life. I
was driving home from school somewhere between Springfield and home in Staunton, and listening. I thought it had to be Terry Tote. Terry Tote on WSMI was just going bananas that this had actually happened. I mean, it was just, if you don't win the title, that story alone is an amazing story, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And Terry was one of our biggest fans and a wonderful person all throughout his life. And we got to connect with him multiple times after that. But the fact of what occurred in that gym was just unbelievable. And to this day, one of the biggest comebacks in sports history. And to this day, why whenever we watch a game, we don't turn it off because you just never know. And I think that's why you always never give up and keep working. But to be down like that and come back, wow, it was incredible.
So you get to the state tournament, you get to the finals. You're there. It's 3 games at that time, right? Mm-hmm. And you played. What was the format? 1 and then 2 on the same day. If you kept going, how did it work?
Friday was Riverton, and then Saturday would be a morning. If you won on Friday, if we beat Riverton, we played Hamilton. And if we beat Hamilton, we'd advance to the state finals against Hale. So it was 1-2, 1-2, 1 on Friday, 2 on Saturday.
And I don't know, do they still do it that way? Where, the final 2 games of the year are the same day? I never understood how we'd have the biggest game of the year, your second game of the day.
I have not had the opportunity to go with a state team, but I know super sectionals. Now with the 4 classes, the super sectional game that occurred at Eastern for us would occur in state at the state tournament now. So it is tough to play 2 on 1 game, but when you're 16, 17, 18, you're not going to get tired. You just go and play.
You're running on adrenaline, right?
Yeah, you're running on adrenaline. And even today's day, those kids are playing 3 and 4 games a day. I think it's too much with club sports the way it is, but 2 games wasn't a big deal. We weren't tired. The bodies recoup pretty quick. And honestly, our practices were harder than games just because of the conditioning they put us through. So we weren't too concerned.
So you win on Friday night. Obviously, you beat Riverton. I don't remember how that turned out. You obviously won, but what was the spread? Was it an easier game?
We were down, I think, 10-0 to start that game with Riverton. We were losing. We had the worst practice of the entire year against the JV the night before, and we got our butts handed to us in the first few minutes of that game. Legendre called a timeout and kind of laid into us, got us going, and then we slowly climbed back from that deficit and ended up winning. But no, we were not picked to win that game. I don't think we were picked to win any game, to be quite frank. I don't even know if we were ranked in state until the last game of the season that we won to put us at number 1.
So you get to Saturday morning. What are you doing that night? What are you doing? You win, you go to the hotel.
So Legendre was a creature of habit. So we checked into the La Quinta Hotel and we'd been there. We ate every single meal, breakfast, lunch, and dinner at Denny's across the parking lot. We did. And then we went back to our rooms and we would either talk in the hallway or lay in the room and watch TV and sleep. That was it. We didn't do anything else.
Who's your roommate?
Kevin Meyer. Kevin was a roommate then, a roommate after college, and he's a great roommate. I could say that. He may not say the same about me, but Kevin was great. And then Dick Hempkin was there with us too. And Dick had obviously graduated, but Dick was just a wonderful supporter and a good friend. So it was that's who we were with that year. That weekend.
The Dickster was like your guy. You rallied around Dick.
There's no one with a bigger heart and love of athletics than Dick Hempkin.
Right.
I mean, just a genuinely good person and loves sports. And that was true from throughout high school, college. And I've not seen him in many years, but I'm pretty fact to know that it's still there.
He's a great guy. I remember him very, very well from those years. So Saturday morning, back at Denny's, right? You go to
at Denny's.
You go to the game. See, this is the stuff. What was it like? We can talk about who scored how many points, but this is the stuff you've never been asked in an interview, right?
Well, Candy Busic's our driver. Had to have Candy, no other driver. We're at Denny's. It's slow, it's delayed. We're lucky to get our food, but hey, it was easy and simple, and that's how Coach liked it. We had the visitors' locker room for Riverton and Hamilton. And so then we get to the championship game after, we're playing Hamilton, and there's a rumor that we're going to get to be in the U of I locker room. Well, at the time, that's the greatest thing on earth. So when that Saturday we beat Hamilton and move on, we go back to the room. We have some lunch at Denny's, and then we kind of sleep and chill for the evening. Well, then we get U of I's locker room for the championship game. And you wouldn't even think there was a championship game. Everybody was so excited to see. I think it was Andy Kaufman at the time was their number one player. And just roaming through that locker room for 17-year-old kids was amazing. So that was the big deal prior to the game starting. And then, prior to that, Coach went through and told us who we were going to guard and what to expect. But we never had any idea that we were going against Chicago Hales Franciscan and picked to lose by 30. We were focused on the U of I locker room and Denny's. I mean, there was not the other stuff.
So you had seen Chicago Hales Franciscan, obviously, throughout the tournament. What's in your head as you're watching them? Are you going, oh my God, how are we going to do this? What was your mindset like going in?
I'll speak to my point as a naive 17-year-old. I didn't pay attention. We were more worried about talking to our friends, hanging out in the room. We did not watch highlights of Hales Franciscan and Cairo. Never saw anything, had no idea. If we had watched that game and seen Nesby and some of the things that happened in that high-flying shootout prior to our game, we may have thought about it, but we did not have that exposure. All we knew is we had a chance to win the state title, and that's what we were going to do. I guess naive is the best way to describe it. 17 and naive.
Coach kept you in a bubble, essentially.
He did.
Yeah.
He did. And Andy may have known, but I don't know that. I know Kevin and I didn't because he was my roommate, but I don't know if anybody else had a true comparison. But there was also an arrogance and a cockiness about that group too, that it didn't really matter. I mean, Jeremy May would tell you that he could take on anybody and he wouldn't care. He'll still try. Ronnie, just a heart of a lion. And then you throw in Kuba was a talent. He was special. But I don't think we truly knew how good he was. And then he goes to U of I and they ask him to walk on after he scrimmages with the kids, throughout his freshman year of basketball. So I think that shows you how talented Andy was. Just didn't get a lot of press, and Kevin was just consistent. So everybody had a chip on their shoulder and just went into play.
Who was your leader? Like, obviously, Legendre's coaching, but if it was internal, who would turn around to the rest of you and tell you to get it together?
I think my one video that snapshots who that is was we're at super sectional Bridgeport, and we're down 6 and we're frustrated, mad. Andy pulls us together and goes, come on, let's go. Let's get it together. And then he was the glue that when it was going to break, he was there. But then, after that, it was a pretty level group. We all kind of knew our roles and let people do what they were best at and didn't try to take the spotlight from somebody else. Andy and Kevin were going to get their 17 a game. Jeremy and I was going to play defense. Jeremy was going to get 7 to 10, and Ronnie was going to facilitate, and everybody knew their role. But in terms of it was getting crunch time, Andy was the one. But then how can you argue Ronnie draining those free throws? I can look at Andy throughout the year saving us in some tough games. And then in St. Elmo, when we're in overtime in the first game of sectionals, Ronnie just went nuts in overtime and lit it up when we had some foul trouble. So I think it switched on the day, and there were various high point scores throughout the year, but Andy was still that glue.
Yeah. You mentioned role player, right? You're saying you're saying you were playing your role. You said you played defense. What was your role? Is that it? To be the guy that just the glue guy?
I think I had some games where I had some double-digit points here and there, but that wasn't what was needed. And so earlier in the year, Legendre had said, hey, you're going to guard Schrodo, and I want him to have nothing, to keep him to a minimum. And Marty was he's a dynamic baseball player, football player, basketball player. And that's when it kind of clicked for me, is that was going to be my role. So from that point on, he said, you're going to guard every player's best player. And that was my role. And I embrace that because, number one, Legendre told me to, and you know why that's important, because the relationships he formed, but it also served as a spark plug with some steals or some good rebounds, or taking their best player out of their game helped us better as a team. So I am enjoyed it. I liked it. And to this day, love watching good defense.
Your shirt, Brad, if you stand up a little bit here, it's got the 23 is greater than 23. If anybody knows sports, knows what that means. But the first 23, Michael Jordan there, he had that guy on that second set of runs, right? Rodman, right? Was your role Rodman-like if you were to compare it?
No funky hair, no bridesmaid dresses. But I think in terms of, I don't think I got under people's skin. I may have at times, but my goal was to just play havoc on defense and, break up their rhythm. And I guess I was fairly successful at that over the years, especially that year, but that was my role. And I'm still excited about that to this day, because I think when you watch a team and a good team play, it takes 5 people. It takes 11 in football. It takes, soccer. You got to have key people, and there's got to be people that know their role. And when there's not a role, then egos take advantage or take the precedent, and then the team suffers. So I was glad that Coach kept us in our spots, but also knew where we would gel well.
So let's get to the end. You win. Right. Again, go on YouTube, watch it. I'll throw a link in the description if you really can't find it, but go relive that yourself. So you talked about it. We've talked about it. It's getting close. It's a 60-ish kind of tie game. They miss a couple shots. Ronnie hits some free throws at the end, ices the whole thing over. Even at the very end, it seems like you just, as a viewer at the time, I felt like this could still not go our way, right? So you eventually win. The people are going crazy, right? There's video you running up to Legendre and ruffling up his hair, and it didn't move. It was like Lego hair. But
I guess I inherited that from him over the years.
Yeah. So you think about what I wanted to get to is, obviously you won. You felt great, I think everyone knows how awesome it must have felt, but how do you get, what's it like getting on the bus going home? Do you guys even realize you really pulled it off?
Well, it was, I think as we go through, number one, you could, in the Assembly Hall, you could see the entire sea of red of all the Staunton fans that were there. And I get chills just thinking about that, because it's a memory in my mind now. You can watch some of the videos and still capture that. And you see it going through the crowd. You can see Corey's parents. And we walked into the crowd to hug our parents up into the bleachers or the seating. And it was something like, we've been to Assembly Hall, because Kevin and I went our freshman, sophomore, junior years to state to watch them. And so we got to see Finley win the state tournament. And that was always something like, boy, that'd be cool. But we never envisioned that we would have that chance. But the raw emotion of seeing that. But then also there was the 17-year-old mindset, because Lucas Calcari said he'd shave his head if we won state. So there's a lot of video of us ruffling his hair because he said he'd shave his head. He didn't, but we won't hold him too hard on that one. His mom may have killed him. But it was amazing to sit there and think about. I think the pure joy as I sit back and get older, seeing the raw emotion on our parents' faces, and my mom and dad, just as an example, and what that meant to them. And then now when you have your own kids and you're chasing games or activities all throughout the year, and then even watching all the sports teams that I've watched over the years in Bunker Hill, Southwestern, Collinsville, Triad, to see that, have that opportunity to finish number one and not lose, it's so hard to do. So I think it meant so much at 17, but now pushing 31 years, it's like, wow, it is something you never will take for granted.
What is it? How do I say this? You're a successful person. And let me do this first. Tell me where everybody went. If we're watching the movie, the little scroll at the end, Brad went and did this, and so did that. Tell everyone here where everyone went and where they've gone.
Ronnie's in accountant financing right here in the Metro. He and Sarah, one of our cheerleaders, have a great family, and his boys are about to go to high school, I believe. And then his daughter's a dynamic gymnast. And then Andy is out in Ohio. He's been he worked in engineering, chemical engineering for a while, and now he's into real estate and property. And so haven't seen Andy in a couple of years, but he's highly successful, just done really well for himself. Kevin is an architect for FGM. He is, I see him quite often because his firm represents our school district. So I get to bond with Kevin, and he's doing really well. And we always joke that it's the best thing to do is be an architect. You can golf and entertain and all that all the time, but Kevin's doing well. Jeremy is a teacher down in Southern Illinois and still teaches golf lessons and coaches with that as well, and done really well. Matt is a teacher overseas, Popovich, and he and his wife Amy have been over there for over almost 20 years now. I think
where overseas?
Oh, you knew you were going to ask me that. I forget where he's at now. He's been in Egypt, he's been in Romania, he's been in Malaysia. I'm not sure where he's back at now. And I knew you were going to ask me. It was going to escape me. And then Corey's working for a distribution company and doing well there. And everybody's done really well. And I think that just speaks volumes to the upbringing we had from our parents and those values. But everybody has has been successful in life. And I got to throw in Derek Brower. Derek's works for a major construction company and travels all over the country. And I spent a lot of time with him this last year, and he's great. He's doing really well. And then we talked about Legendre, but Lamore is engaged, and we're still waiting for that wedding date. But we're glad that Lamore's retired and doing well and traveling. So everybody's done well in life.
So that leads me to another thing: is you are all still getting together. Mm-hmm. How does that work? What do you do?
Typically, it's a July-December rotation. Most of the time, this year we went to the Mizzou Illinois game. Had a chance to get tickets, and we all went to that. So that was a blast, and a couple snafu schedules and things of that nature. But it worked out. We had just a good time watching basketball and sitting in a social environment to talk. And then outside of that, we typically go to R&B's
in Staunton.
R&B's in Staunton, and do breakfast or lunch or even dinner. A couple years ago, we celebrated Coach's birthday there in July. And it's just good to sit back and just enjoy each other's company. There's oftentimes not an agenda. It's typically food. And then we'll start telling stories about our lives or what's going on currently. And then there'll be inevitably someone will come up and talk and ask how people are doing, or, Staunton has been very, the community of Staunton has still embraced us 31 years later, which you can never take for granted. And so those people will pop up, we'll have a conversation, but it's just a lot of fun to sit back, socialize, and pick on each other, laugh, cry a little, but it's a good time to get together.
I keep wanting to move forward with what you do today, but I keep getting more questions, right? You were eventually, as the team, inducted into the Illinois Basketball Hall of Fame. Am I saying that right?
Illinois High School Coaches Basketball Hall of Fame.
Yeah. And so, I mean, it comes up often. I think it was 2013, 2014, somewhere Staunton's football team starts to make a run. Yep. But every time it would come on TV, they keep referring back to you guys. it's like that just keeps, if there's an article in the paper, it was these parallels. They ended second, right? But they had a similar run, but it all comes back to you guys in 1993.
And it does, because we're the only one. But I will tell you, most of us made that trip to Northern Illinois to watch that football team, and we watched them all through the playoffs. I think it's great to be in the crowd of this state championship, but we would like nothing more than to see it happen again in Staunton for those students or their families in the community. I would like nothing more to see it happen in Collinsville. We were close in Bunker Hill. We got second once, and we were close in Southwestern. We got second once. But I think my greatest hope before my career comes to an end is that I get to see it happen, whether it's for Staunton or where I'm working, because it is a phenomenal experience. But you're right. It always comes back. But man, do we want to see somebody else get one, just to say we could watch it. And I want to see that as a fan. We've been so close, but you've seen it as a player. You want to see it as a fan with all those emotions. So. Yeah.
Well, when I was a seventh grader, our eighth grade team, these were the Gokels, Kazupkis, Bart Calaveros. Yep. They won as a junior high. And, as an older fella here in Mount Olive, we've had our girls team in the junior high go all the way. The Gillespie boys baseball went all that way, so these are friends of ours personally. So it is I've never experienced it, right, as a player, but I've seen what it's done as a fan, and it is kind of a special thing to remember back.
Well,
So,
and I can tell you, like you mentioned, Gokul and Kazuki and Scherf and those guys, that group there, because I was a kid with my dad being a principal, and I was there, got to see all the games up to the championship. I had to stay home for that one, so it'll be too late. But they're like iconic. I mean, we looked up to them. That was our mark. And not only when I watched what they did in junior high, middle school, but how good they were in high school too. So it does have a level piece where you can look up to someone and try and recreate what they did. And they always meant a lot to us. They still do today, but always enjoy seeing Gokul and Kazuki, and haven't seen Kazuki in a few years, but Gokul at least once a year, and it's always a pleasure.
Yeah. He's coaching at East Staunton Wood River, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my son. I was a scorekeeper for the team. We bumped into him not too long ago when he was playing. Adam was playing Mount Olive basketball, but yeah, I was bench warming for those guys. Bill Scherf and I, we don't look at today, but even Scherf today says we always used to get confused, he and I. But he's in way better shape than me. So great to really relive that, Brad. My question before, I asked you kind of what had happened, kind of what's the end of the movie and the what happened to everybody part was you've all gone off and been successful.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that would have happened anyway? I kind of think it probably would have happened anyway had you not won the state.
So it always comes back to your roots, and I think number one, we had a good education through going to school. We had the Lutheran school, the Catholic school, and the public school all came together. So all of us had a good quality roots there all the way through high school and a sound base and influence. Our parents, I think you look back and look collectively at the group of parents that raised all of us on that team. We couldn't ask for a better group of parents to push us, be supportive and loving. And I think you're right. The state championship has opened some doors, no doubt. It's opened a lot of conversations. But would the success have been there? I think so. I really do, because of the education and the quality of home lives we all came from.
Well, it's kind of where I was going earlier with something. When did it seem like it was meant to be? And, you gave me that answer. I don't necessarily think it's as much of a fluke that you were in that position just because of everything you just said, right? You're all successful people. I think that was there. You had the glue that made you all together. You had the leadership, both internally, like you said, maybe from Andy, and then certainly from Coach, keeping you guys protected from what was maybe going on around the outside to get you through the run. But internally as people, that doesn't change, right? That's, your championship was more of a result of where you came from and what you were brought up through than a fluke of some nature. That's why I don't think it was necessarily much of a fluke.
I can't argue that. And, the one piece, like Jeremy is one of the athletes on the team and doesn't get a ton of recognition outside of his playing of skills, but he went to state in 3 sports, golf, baseball, and basketball. I mean, that's a big deal. We know the history of Ronnie and his how amazing he was, Andy, his skills, Kevin, and then Kevin, they went on to play after high school as well. But, Jeremy, 3-sport athlete in state. I mean, that's a big deal.
It's huge.
So there was a lot of determination that people wanted to be successful. And I think of all the reasons we talked about, education, family, and just go get them, that was definitely the case.
So, Brad, as you become an adult, you've moved in. And so I'll go backwards to kind of come forwards again. You grew up a principal's kid, right? Yeah. And now, you've got a daughter. She's a principal's kid, right? What does that feel like growing up principal's kid? And then obviously you became a teacher. You've moved up the ranks. What was that like growing up, knowing, Mark Skertich is there at any given point in time, and now I'm dealing with this kid?
There were some times, obviously, in junior high, 5th, 6th junior high, that there were times that I may have made a team because of my dad. That's what the story of the kids would say. But you got to get thicker skin and just listen to it. And then as you get older, mature, obviously those are comments that are made, but by the time you're a junior and senior, you can say what you want, but that was difficult. I think the other piece of being a principal's kid is you always have an eye on you. And because if you don't behave or you don't do something right, it's just a quick message right down the hall. And that was always a concern. And my dad did a really good job of trying to shelter me from that and stay out of my lane so I could be a kid. But inevitably it crossed. I mean, I got paddled in school. I mean, I'm not going to lie. And
me too, from your dad. Yes.
So, and he actually asked me, do you want to be suspended or do you want to be paddled? And I go, I'll take the paddling because I'm going to get it twice as bad at home. But, that's how it is. But I think in those early, what it did do for me that I didn't know then was I got to spend so much time with teachers and educators. And so while I was in all the way through school, K-12, I was learning about things that were going to help me in my business today that I had no idea. I mean, I can't even tell you how many conversations were had with my dad and Kyle Lofka over the years, just as an example that I just listened and, took things in or watched him navigate certain situations from a principal's role. But through middle school, I'd say I wasn't fairly fond of being the principal's kid in junior high. But then as I got to high school, it was great because I got to run home and get something if I forgot it. I got to work in the office. And we got a little more freedom because they knew I wasn't going to screw up because of who my dad was. So I think it ebb and flow. It sucked being younger. But then as I got older and more mature, it made more sense. And now when I look back today, it was really key. And I've learned a lot over the years from being in my parents' realm and their business that's helped me in my professional career today.
Did you know you wanted to go into education the moment you were?
No, I didn't. No, I did not. I wanted to be a biologist. I said I would never do education. Wanted to be a marine biologist because I like being on the water. That's a great story at 17, but it just was not meant to be when I went through the academics portion of it. Too much. It was not going to fit my lifestyle, too social and too wanting to be out and about. So my dad goes, well, if it's not going to be that, why don't you consider coaching and you can go into teaching. There's a good retirement. There's a regular good rate of pay and you have your summers off so you can be with your family. I said, okay, I'll coach. Well, I went back to get my teaching. I changed my major to be a teacher. And ironically, after I graduated, I never coached. I only did intramurals as a sponsor, but my dad said, hey, it's a good profession, constant retirement, always money, and blah, blah, blah. So here we are.
So you've never coached a school sport ever?
No, I did intramurals. I did intramurals at Triad for the 3 years I was there. And we did roller skating, bowling, dodgeball, flag football. We had about 150 kids that were not in sports, but wanted to be active. And so there were myself and two others would conduct 3 nights a week activities for 3 sessions a year for kids just to be busy. And it was a blast.
That's almost amazing to me, right? My sister-in-law's teacher, you worked with her in Bunker Hill. It was like, if you were going to get hired, you kind of had to say you were going to coach a sport. It seemed like for almost everyone of that era. Eventually, Brad, you take the step from teacher to principal. And you've started moving up, and now you're the school superintendent of Collinsville schools, right? Which is a big deal, but it's not your first superintendent job. You were in Southwestern for a while. Yes. Even as you're a teacher, what makes you say, I want the next step? Why move up? So many people don't. What made you different?
First, I got my master's right away. And the first reason behind it was once you get your master's, you can make more money on the pay scale throughout your career. And so you go from a bachelor's to a master's on the pay scale, and it's about a $10,000 raise. That was the first priority, to see more income. The second priority, I wanted to get my master's done and be a principal because my dad did it at 27 and I wanted to beat that goal. And so I think I did it at 26, but who's counting? But that was the purpose. But I also, as I said, I'd never wanted to be an educator. I also looked at the impact that my dad and mom were able to have on kids, and especially my dad through the principal's role. And I wanted to have a sense of that accomplishment as an administrator. So not sure if I don't know if I will ever be able to fill his footsteps, but I wanted to try. And so that was my mark to becoming an administrator, and what ended up leading me to Bunker Hill for 9 years, and had a great run there just because the classroom is great. Impacting kids is phenomenal. But then I think from the principal's role, you can impact your teachers, you can impact your kids, and you can impact families and be a good part of the community. And so that was what was really attractive at that point in time. And I loved it. For 9 years in Bunker Hill, it was great. Couldn't ask for a better run. But I think in terms of going up to the superintendency, I kind of hit that mark where I needed to do something different. My boss at the time, Mr. Cox, and then eventually Marge Rogers had given me the opportunity to do a lot of the grants and the business side of the superintendency. And it's kind of like a puzzle and maneuvering a lot of different pieces and then renovations with O&M. So having that opportunity kind of sparked my interest that, okay, I'm not going to be a principal forever. If I want to be a superintendent, I need to go back. And so I did. And it was tough to go back to school after being away for 9 years. But I wanted to have a larger revenue stream for our family, but I also wanted to have a bigger impact in addition to where I was with the principal. And I think the superintendent, you can play a much larger part in the community. And so once I finished that, got to go to Southwestern for 9 years. And I was just really fortunate, whether it was Bunker Hill or for Southwestern, to work with good people and good communities for a long time. And we did a lot of good things, from test scores to behavior to discipline to facility improvements. It was a lot of fun, saw student success. And about 7 years into Southwestern, I felt like I needed an itch to try something different, to grow a little bit further. And so I talked to a couple of my well-known my good people I lean on for advice, and they said, "Look, if you want to take that next step to a bigger district, you have to get your doctorate, and if you don't, you're not getting in." And I was like, "Oh my God, I can't do this." But decided to jump in and started that program with some friends of mine that we also got our superintendent's endorsement with. And so that made it like a little family was back together with Sandy and Jay and Jason. And so when we did that, that kind of set the pieces in motion to have my doctorate in leadership, but then be able to jump into a larger district like Collinsville. Absent of that, I wouldn't have gotten a look. And the other advantage to that was my dad didn't finish his doctorate. He was an all but dissertation. So that was the second piece of motivation he gave me, because I wanted to be a principal before he was, but I also didn't want to have an ABD like he did. So he was still pushing me in my 40s, even though he may not have known it.
That's amazing. Really. Still got to beat dad. That's awesome. But you know what? You've got kids. Right?
Yeah.
You want them to better themselves further than you. So you get Absolutely. It. You want them to be driven to do that. Let's talk about being a superintendent, right? Mm-hmm. You were at Southwestern for many years, and really this is the time where I kind of got to know you again, right? Yeah. I knew you when you were a kid, right? But we were never, we're 5-6 years apart in age.
Yes.
And never ran the same circles and everything like that. But you're married to one of my coworkers who I adore, and Stacy. It's your wife, right? You've got a daughter, Olivia. You're a grandpa now, right?
Yeah.
You're
Anthony's got Anthony's.
Yeah. So this is awesome, right? From a family perspective, but where I'm going with this is it's the responsibility that I've watched, right? Just knowing Stacy. I have a name in your house. Tell everyone what it is. What's my name?
Carpool John.
Carpool John. Because Stacy and I carpooled from Staunton forever back to where we work. And so I got to hear everything you were going through all the time. Brad's working on this. Brad's stressed about that. Brad's got this going on. So I always heard like a little filter through her perspective of what was concerning to you in your life, which is what brings me to my next question, Brad. It's what's that like to have the responsibility of these large school districts kind of falling to you, right? All these decisions point back to one person. And I know this for a fact. I have a job that by and large, when I walk out the door and I turn my phone off or whatever, I'm not working anymore. It's over. You're always working. How do you bear that weight? What does that feel like?
The first part of it's the easiest answer. When you see students accomplish success or learn something for the first time, or have an experience that they would not have gotten otherwise, that makes it worth it. The smile of a student and the joy that they see is something that you cannot replicate, and you just can't fake. But when students are thriving in their environment and doing well socially and academically, that is the best part of the job, hands down. Seeing teachers in their element making an impact and being able to compliment them and say, hey, wow, look at that student growth. Look at how you've helped these students evolve and be better, not only behavioral wise, but academics. Those are the pieces that you just thrive on every day. Then you see and this could be held with any of them, Southwestern or Collinsville, the amount of passion and pride that people take in their school district. You want to exuberate that. You want to enhance that. You want to draw people there. And so having that opportunity, it's a burden, but it's also a joy. And I love seeing students, staff, and the community just thrive. And I think that's the part that keeps you going and motivated. Now, on the flip side, obviously, there's a lot of things that could go wrong in our business, whether that's terrible weather, as an example. Those are easy ones now. Life is very fragile. We've seen the passing of staff and students over the years. That is absolutely miserable. But then the other piece that's you get better at it, I think, over time, is you have to be willing to trust all of the people that you work with, because you're only one person, but also give them constructive criticism at times. But then on the flip side, really keep them upbeat and motivated, because education is a people business. And so as we go through this, we have to make sure that our principals, our custodians, our cooks, our drivers, our secretaries, our teachers, that they're upbeat and happy. And that's tough because it's a roller coaster. Education is kind of like an ebb and flow throughout the year. Man, we're all on cloud 9 in August, but by the time we get to Thanksgiving, we're dragging across the finish line. Then all of a sudden we get to Christmas break, and right now we're in this miserable month of February, and everybody's just trying to hold on to spring break. So it is a lot of stress, a lot of pressures, because there could be 7,000 decisions that are made, and not one of them come out of my desk that could cause a really challenging day. But the key to that is just being honest and being transparent of what's going on, and then knowing that we're trying to do what's best for kids in our community. And that's the blessing and the curse of it. But I'm surprised she told you I had a lot of stuff going on, because I make it a rule not to talk about work at home. So I don't know what the hell she's telling you.
I don't necessarily know it was like the secrets of anything, right? It was just like, people talk. She's like, yeah, he's at school when you were going to school, and then you were doing double duty, actually working, doing a doctorate, the stress of just everything you had, the decisions you'd make, not to bring anything up in particular, because I couldn't even remember, but something pops in, they're quoting Brad in the Alton Telegraph again, or whatever, because of something that wasn't your fault necessarily, but you had to deal with it. And that's why I ask. It's just tough to always be there, which I'll pivot maybe the negative into the positives. It seems like if I turn to my PC here and I Google Brad Skertich, it fills in the superintendent part for me, right? Because it seems like on a lot of issues that come up in education here in the Metro East, you're very much a leader in not just of your own districts, but of other districts. They look to you to help kind of guide them through. One I remember when you were still at Southwestern, it was getting the 1%, the penny tax, as they called it, through. And it was like, I remember seeing, I won't mention it. I remember seeing other superintendents' letters. I'm going, looks like the one Brad wrote, right? And I'm sure you didn't care. You're helping them to push it through, right?
Their success was our success, so I was glad they used it.
Yeah, and then certainly as we went through the pandemic, was getting kids returned to school. Why do you think they look to you, it seems? And this is just my perspective. Why do they think they come to you to help lead them through this? I think it's because of you and the leadership position that you've embraced, and you come across as that person they want to follow.
Well, I never look at it that way, so I appreciate you saying that. That's humbling. I have a really good team of people that I work with, and they're phenomenal. There's a lot of good days, bad days. There's some banter and there's some button heads, but they're good people. But I think what we always try to do is my number one rule is let's make an improvement. Let's improve from where we were last year to where we are this year. And that could be from test scores to discipline to our facilities. And with that means we're constantly evolving. And when you're constantly evolving, people always ask, hey, how did you do this? Or how did you do that? But on the flip side, we're oftentimes behind the scenes calling someone saying, hey, what did you do here? How did you do that? You're trying to learn as we go. So I think it's constant evolution, constant learning to what we can do better. But I also will tell everyone, if they have a question, just come and take a look, come and tour. We're an open book, and we want to help, because if you're successful because of what we're doing, maybe when you're there, you'll pick up something from us that can help our students and our staff as we go forward. So I think education is, we always say it's a good lesson plan isn't brand new and just created out of thin air. It's usually a beg, borrow, steal, and adapt. And so I think that's the key is borrow from others, but always be willing to share. Because if I look back through my career, who helped me, and my dad is big, always been key for me. Kyle Lofka has been tremendous. But then I can look at Doc Beeler, Mike Kelly, David Lett. They've just been some people that I've leaned on through my life. So whenever someone needs help, give it to them, because someone gave us help too.
Understood. I'm going to be a hard-hitting journalist here.
You go. I'm ready.
You mentioned someone at the outset of our show named Zach Weigel. There is a rumor you used to feed him inside information about school closing percentages, as he has led the world's most greatest school closing prediction team. Is there any truth you may have shared any information with him as he made predictions?
None at all, because Hillsborough and Southwestern were too damn far away to have any close proximity to that rule. But his skill set is highly effective, because I think he still has an accuracy rate of over 95% when he called it. So, and he's still doing it today, even though he's in a different role. So I love that.
He's been on my show many times, and he's name dropped you, and it's fun for you to name drop him. So he's part of he's 5-timers at least club, as he calls it here on the What's That Like podcast. And Zach, if you're watching, you'll be back again, but we got to get some room for some new folks like Brad to come in here.
Well, obviously he's just doing good things. The Stomp on Cancer, was he over hundreds of thousands of dollars now?
It'll be $1 million this year for sure.
Is it $1 million? Okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure. I was just reading on it about a couple of weeks back, and I'm like, my gosh, he's a special person. No,
he reminds me much of why he's been on so much is he's a driven individual, which is what attracts me to people, yep. Right? That they've got a purpose, they've got a pride. And I think you've picked it up through what we've been talking about here today, Brad. It wasn't about, tell me who scored how many points in which game. It was about the feelings you had and the reasons you got there and the drive that you had. And you certainly are somebody that exemplifies that. Zach is too. And most of the guests that I have here on the What's That Like podcast, they're really driven to that. That's the hidden through line when I talk to somebody.
You have good guests, and they were good before me. So I'm just telling you on the past. I'm not throwing it out because I'm on here.
Well, you are, and it's been overdue to have you. So anything we haven't talked about, sir?
Oh, I'm glad you're back at it. No, I think I would say I think everybody be graceful in today's society. Be positive with your kids and let them be kids is one thing I would say, because one thing we do today, we make adult problems. We push them onto children at a much younger age than they should be because of social media or interactions. And if you're out there, if you got to have a difficult conversation at home, do it away from your child so they can be a kid and grow and mature socially and emotionally without the stressors of adulthood. Because the one thing that I've learned is every year I've gotten older is I'm like, damn, how did my mom and dad make this look so easy? I had no idea. And the pressures that are there with a home, family, work, you name it. We need to keep that separate from kids so they can grow and mature at that teenage level more so than having them grow up too fast. That's what I would add. That's me on my soapbox as an educator and an avid sports fan. Let kids be kids right now, and we need to do a better job of that.
So I asked you this before. What was it like for you to be a principal's kid? Has that helped you be a principal's kid's dad?
Yeah, I do. We really did not move to the district where she was going to be a student that I was working in until I felt like I was at a place that I could handle it. And I think it's important to allow her to be in her lane. I don't talk about work. I don't talk about snow days, as we jokingly talked about that. Oftentimes Olivia will say, people come and ask me, and I look at him and say, I'm never going to know. He's never going to tell me anything. So I think it's important to let them stay in their lane. And my dad tried to do that with me, and he did a good job. And I try to do that with her, but it is also cool to be dad and getting a hug at school sometimes too. And I will miss that in about a year and a half, but I've been grateful for the experience that I've had as a parent educator the last 5 years, and we're getting ready to roll into the sixth and final one year pretty quick.
Yeah. So she's a junior, right? What's next for Miss O?
Wants to go to mental health, some capacity. She's kicking around psychiatry. We're not for sure, but we're going to do some college visits here in the next month and then find out where we go from there.
I hear Oxford's on the list.
I guess we're going for a weekend visit. I don't know if she's going to enroll there, but yeah, we'll definitely go for a visit.
Make that visit in the fall during a football game.
Yes,
that's there's no better place to be during the fall than an SCC campus. So, Brad, thank you so much for spending some time with me here on the holidays. We record this. I know you're extremely busy, and it's an honor for me to have you here, sir.
John, it's a pleasure. I appreciate you, your personality. And I love Carpool John for the safe trips and many conversations, but I also still want to be a fly in the back of that car when you two are singing on the way home with some songs that come on. So I've heard many stories. Yeah, like that.
We had our hits, maybe some Grease, maybe a little Black Eyed Peas. You never know. It could have been a couple of things. Your wife, Stacy's a great person.
With you two in the car with music, I'm sure it was amazing. I have no doubt.
Well, thank you for spending some time with me. Thank you for sharing your story. Thanks for everything. Thanks for being a fan of the show. You were always listening back in the day, and it's great for me to have you back here as we get this thing back going again.
All right. Thanks, man. It's good to see you. Take care.
All right. You are the best. I'm John. That's Brad. Peace out.